Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a book review on Milady by Laura L. Sullivan. Milady by Laura L. Sullivan is a feminist retelling of Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers, but told through the point of view of Milady de Winter. Starting as the daughter of a noble lord, Milady's story begins as she is sent to the English court to learn the art of seduction. After a scandal, she is then sent to a convent where she plots her escape. Milady's life is full of heartbreak and betrayal, but she manages to always pull herself back to the top and rise with a determination that leaves her enemies underestimating her at every turn. So, I guess a quick heads up about my familiarity with Alexandre Dumas's The Three Musketeers. I absolutely love the story of The Three Musketeers. I have read Dumas's story, The Three Musketeers. I have read that, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I was kind of pleasantly surprised with it, because I was kind of worried it would be a little slow and boring, but I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, I enjoyed Dumas's original Three Musketeers, and then yeah, I am an absolute sucker for any sort of remake of The Three Musketeers. Yeah guys, I will watch just about any damn movie or TV series with The Three Musketeers. Because yeah, I love that BBC series that ran for like 3 seasons several years ago. I love that BBC version. I loved even that cheesy version from like the early 90s with Kiefer Sutherland. You guys, I really have a guilty pleasure for that. Yeah, I really love that one made quite a number of years ago with Matthew McFadden and Logan Lerman. I really like that one. And yeah, wasn't there a movie called The Musketeer? Wasn't there a movie called The Musketeer that was focused on D'Artagnan, starring that guy that's like on Grey's Anatomy? I can't think of his name right now, but I think it was starring that guy from Grey's Anatomy, if I'm not mistaken. I even really like that. I don't remember much of it, but I do remember really liking that one. So yeah, any sort of remake, retelling, whatever, TV series, movie, anything with The Three Musketeers, I always really love watching that sort of thing. And the thing is, the one common thing with everything I've just listed is that it's all solely focused on the Three Musketeers. You know, it's all solely focused on the men of the story. And I have always had a fascination and an appreciation for the character of Milady de Winter. She is the primary antagonist and villainess of the Three Musketeers story, but you don't really know much about her. And yeah, she's kind of always in the background sometimes of these retellings in the movies and TV shows. Sometimes she'll have a bigger role, you know, but yeah, it's all of these remakes, movies and TV shows, it's always focused on the Three Musketeers, rightfully so. So yeah, when I first found out there was a book coming out called Milady, solely focused on Milady de Winter, I was like, oh, yes, please, I must get my hands on this. So yeah, I finally got a copy of this, and I read it, and I think for the most part, I really did enjoy this book. I did have a few little problem spots here and there with it, because there were some elements of it that I was like, well, I wasn't really expecting this. I was expecting kind of something else to the narrative, I suppose. But I'll get to that as I'm kind of getting through this review. But overall, I really did enjoy this book, and it was nice and refreshing to get a feminist retelling on the Three Musketeers and focusing on the female villain, who, as you're reading this novel, you do definitely see in a different light, and she doesn't really become the villain, really. It's the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan who are actually the villains in this retelling. So I guess I'll kind of start there, because that's a big thing to know with this novel, and the big thing that Laura L. Sullivan is doing, because you know the classic line of history, you know, is often told by the victors. It's not told by the losers, you know. And that's how she kind of takes Alexandre Dumas's original story of the Three Musketeers, that Alexandre Dumas was telling the story of the Three Musketeers, and because it's on their point of view, they're the heroes, and Milady is the villain. like I said, the heroes are writing the story, not the losers, you know, because Milady is the loser at the end of the day in that telling of Alexandre Dumas' story. So I really found that fascinating. It was really fascinating that that Sullivan took that approach, that the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan, they are the villains, and you do, as the novel progresses, you do just really come to despise them, and it's like, oh, they're despicable. and you kind of feel a little guilty almost, because I love the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan. I love the romance with all four of those characters. I just love all their personalities, and at first it was almost a little disorienting and kind of confusing, like, oh my god, they're the villains, how do I feel about this? It's weird and strange. But I like that. I like that Laura L. Sullivan kind of made me uncomfortable almost, you know, presenting them as the villains. So yeah, in this story, Milady is definitely the hero. She is the protagonist. You are rooting for her. You're wanting things to go in her direction. You're wanting the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan to lose. I really loved Laura L. Sullivan's portrayal of Milady in this book as well. Milady is, she's cunning and seductive, but she's also just very highly intelligent, and she can really look after herself and take care of herself. And yeah, whenever she is loyal to somebody, she's going to be loyal to you. And you better not backstab her, because if you backstab her, over you. So I really loved the portrayal of Milady in this, her characteristics. She's definitely highly sympathetic in this book. And obviously this book and the original as well, they take place in the 1600s. Milady doesn't have the same rights as men. She can't do certain things. She can't say certain things. She has to navigate a very dangerous game in this 1600s world with the men around her, and, you know, manipulate certain men in the ways that she needs them, you know. There's some men she needs, some men she doesn't. She has to learn to navigate who she can use and who she can't, who has power, who doesn't, you know, in order to ensure her own success or her own position or her own self-preservation or whatever. She knows how to kind of manipulate when she needs to and use her womanly wiles. And yeah, another big aspect of this book, something that men in this time didn't have to worry about, was purity, whether she's a virgin or not. Milady, her purity is constantly questioned in this book, and all the men, every time she thinks she's kind of fallen in love with a certain man, they'll kind of turn around and be like, are you pure? If you're not pure, I don't want to marry you. And it's like the men in the meantime have slept around with a million different women, and it's okay for them, but it's not okay for Milady to do the same thing. And Milady's journey from start to finish in this whole book is just really fascinating, really captivating. Yes, she starts off as the daughter of a noble lord. She's sent to the English court to learn the art of seduction, pretty much. Yeah, once there, she kind of gets into a scandal. Her heart gets broken. She's betrayed on so many different levels. She's sent to a convent. It's here that she's plotting, trying to escape from this convent. And yes, she meets a particular female character that's quite prominent in Alexandre Dumas's Three Musketeers story. I was kind of really fascinated with how this character kind of played into things. I don't want to kind of mention too much in fear of spoilers here. And then, yeah, kind of the last chunk of the novel is once she has got out of the convent. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. It's Milady de Winter. You know she's got to get out of the convent. Yeah, the rest of the novel is how she meets a certain musketeer and how the two fall in love. And yeah, if you've read the original Three Musketeers, you know which musketeer she's attached to and kind of what goes down there. So yeah, I loved her journey, kind of starting off as a naive, foolish girl originally, and yeah, as she kind of starts building up her confidences and self-esteem and whatnot, she really starts to gain her own maturity and own power, and yeah, become a badass lady by the end of this novel. So yeah, let's get to some of my negatives with this book, because I did have some negatives, things that may not bother you possibly as a reader, but they did bother me. But I think it's important to kind of note these things. I kind of kept saying this was like a retelling of Three Musketeers. But I think I need to reframe that and use a different word. Because this book is not really a retelling of the Three Musketeers. It's really an origin story for Milady, if that makes sense. Because when I went into this book, something I was expecting with this book that I did not get, and I was kind of a little disappointed with, I was expecting this book to be just that. I was expecting it to be a retelling of the Three Musketeers, but yet focusing on Milady and what she's doing behind the scenes, essentially. You know, that's what I was expecting, like what she's doing behind the scenes, you know, because in Alexandre Dumas's book, we are primarily with the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan and what they're doing. So I was expecting, like, oh, Milady, we're going to see what she's doing in the meantime, you know. So yeah, this book ended up not being a retelling of the Three Musketeers. Like I said, this ended up being more of an origin story. This entire book is pre the Three Musketeers, if that makes sense. There are scatterings of chapters because, like, the framework of this novel, let me kind of start there. The framework of this novel, it starts off, you're in 1628, and you are following the events of Alexandre Dumas's The Three Musketeers. And those chapters that take place in 1628, those chapters are scattered throughout the entire book, like every so many chapters or so. You'll get a 1628 chapter. Which is the Three Musketeers retelling. But this book is primarily focused on the years of, like, what is it, 1615 to 1616. This book is primarily focused on those 2 years specifically, which is the origin story of Milady. So yeah, I was not expecting that, and that's what kind of got me a little upset initially, because I wasn't anticipating a total, like, 100% origin story, you know what I mean? Because really, the retelling aspects, the actual retelling of the Three Musketeers is really, like, just about 10% of this whole novel, you know? If I'm making sense there, you guys. So like I mentioned, that bothered me to some extent. It may or may not bother you. It just kind of depends on what you're looking forward to and anticipating with this novel. But I do think it's important to make note of that. You do need to be aware that this is not a straight-out Three Musketeers retelling. This is primarily an origin story. And because of that, because this is an origin story, the actual Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan, their only appearances are really just in the 1628 setting, except for the one particular musketeer who she forms an attachment to, like in the 1616 setting. So yeah, the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan are just in this book for a very, very small portion, but you do, like I mentioned, you do get that idea very quickly. They are supposed to be the villains of this story. So I just wish they had been in this a little bit more, you know. I wish they had been in it just a tad bit more, because I think that dynamic, those relationships with Milady are just very fascinating, you know, and I would have loved to have seen that explored more. Since you don't get that much of the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan in this book, you do get a lot of cameo appearances by other characters in the Three Musketeers. There's some characters that pop up and then they're kind of revealed to be like a certain character or whatever by the end, and it's like, oh, okay, that was a neat little twist and turn there that Laura L. Sullivan did. This character is actually this character if you've read the original. So there's little things like that that are really interesting. So overall, you guys, I did really enjoy this book. I do have some minor complaints about it and things I was a little upset about, but that's kind of just me. And the thing is, those little minor upsets for me didn't detract from this book or totally ruin it. If anything, I still just highly enjoyed this. It was a quick read. I found it very fascinating. I loved just a whole book on Milady de Winter, you guys. That was what was the highlight, was just, it's only her. So you guys, that's it for this review of Laura L. Sullivan's Milady. In the comments below, have you guys read this book? Do you plan on reading it? And let me know down in the comments below, what is your favorite adaptation, retelling, remake, whatever you want to call it, of Alexandre Dumas's The Three Musketeers. Like I said, one of my particular favorites is the BBC adaptation that was like 3 seasons long. I loved that show. I'm curious what other adaptations other people like. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.